So, thank you, Joe, for all this talk of neurobiology, but we're about schools. What does this mean in school? What do these impacts look like in school? And let me talk about the academic impacts, presenting behavior, and relationships. In academic, I'm going to talk about two areas. I'm going to talk about foundations for learning, and then I'm going to talk about learning process. And in foundations, some of the things we've already talked about. Language, left hemisphere kind of stuff. Language, not only verbal, but nonverbal. The ability to use language as a functional tool to solve problems. All these pieces can be impacted. And again, not every student with significant traumatic experience will present with all of these. But again, pick one or two. So language. Memory, particularly sequential memory, and sequential also meaning cause-effect, if A then B. And this shows up in school. Think of how we teach in language arts, how we teach critical thinking. We'll be reading a story, and I watched this in a second grade class, reading a story about two kids. Mom gives them money, sends them to the store to buy milk and eggs, right? They follow the story. Teacher gets to where they're at the front of the store, stops the story and says, what do you think is going to happen next? Critical thinking. Take information, create a chronology, cause-effect, put that information in context, and then make a prediction about what you think is going to happen next. Think about this information you have. And this one kid raised his hand, and she said yes. He said, they're going to buy a dog. And, you know, he got the buy thing right, but the dog? And the teacher was very good, and someone else answered it. And afterwards, I was with the student and the student's counselor, and I said, well, you know, can I ask you a question? Sure. Well, why do you say a dog? He said, you know, I always wanted a dog. And I thought it would be nice if they had a dog. So he's sitting in that circle, and typical to most kids like this, it's not that he's not remembering anything. It's that he's not getting that A, B, C, D, that sequential chronology. Okay, they're at a store. They have money. Let's buy a dog. He's taking his own wants, his own needs, projecting it into the story. That's not developing framework for learning. It's not developing critical thinking skills. He was well regulated enough to be in that group, but he's kind of moving between his own internal thoughts and what's happening in that classroom. Academic performance, the ability to get work done. And I want to start with executive function. And what I mean by executive function, we do it every day, all the time. Executive function is about creating a goal, developing a plan to accomplish the goal, executing that plan, and then thinking about, reflecting on how'd that work. And if it worked well, I store that plan away, and the next time I have that task to do, bad whistle, I'll pull that out, and I'll execute that plan. If it didn't work well, I'll note that, I'll make some potential modifications based on my experience, store that away, and use the modified plan next time. And what did I just describe? Cause-effect, sequential chronology that I'm actually going to remember, pull out and use in a thoughtful manner. It's very difficult for a lot of the kids that have significant traumatic experience to do that. Think about transitions in school. Think about that kid who I showed you the brain pictures of, the red and green cerebellum, right? Hypervigilant, walks into a classroom, back of the classroom. Chalkboard here, windows here, scanning. I'm going to pause for a sec. Think about the last time you were truly frightened. What happens to all those filters? You know, when we're kind of moving around like today, we're filtering things out. You know, the lawnmower, filter that out. There's some buzzing going on up here, I'm filtering it out. But when we get frightened, what happens to those filters? They're gone. We hear everything. Our bodies recognize fright. They take the filters away because any little thing we hear, see, smell might be significant to keep us safe. And so the filters come down. So this kid walks into the class, sits in the back of the room, and he's scanning. He's activated. He's hypervigilant. What's that talk in the hallway? How close is this person getting to me? What's the tone of that teacher's voice? And this is kind of spinning, spinning, spinning. 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes into class, and all of a sudden things are quiet. And the student goes, okay, and looks around. And it's quiet because the teacher handed out a worksheet, and everyone's busy working on the worksheet. Now, it would be great if that child in the back of the class raised their hand and said, excuse me, I've been a little hyper-vigilant here in the back of the room because it took me a while to feel safe here in class. Could you remind me what this assignment is about? And I'm serious, it would be great if there was enough self-awareness to say, I need you to go over that again, I couldn't settle. Right? But they're not. And what they do is they develop skills to get through the class. Name, is there a word bank? Date, I wonder what Eddie's doing. Joe, don't look at Eddie's paper, you can do this yourself. Right? And they'll develop a way to get through. That's the best circumstance. Oftentimes it might be rip. I'm not doing the effing paper today. Push it on the floor. Get up. Disrupt Jimmy on the other side. Right? Divert attention, whatever it might be. Transitions. Attention. A lot of these kids carry an ADHD diagnosis, which I find rather ironic. Because what did I just describe in that hypervigilant kid? Is that a lack of attention? Oh my God, no. But it's attention to all the wrong things. Tone of voice, physical space. I worked with a student in fourth grade. I'm walking down the hallway first thing in the morning, and the teacher pops her head out and goes, Joe, do you have a few minutes? He just isn't with me this morning. And I said, sure. And we went for a walk, and we found a place just to sit and chat. And I said, what's up? And we're talking, but you can see in his eyes, he's distant, he's somewhere else. And I know him pretty well. I said, well, what's going on? He goes, listen, do you hear that? And I listen, and I'm hearing nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, shit, auditory hallucinations. No, please, this is a nice kid. Don't, you know. I go, no. He goes, no, listen, it's really low. And I listen, and there is this low vibration, like heavy equipment way out somewhere. I go, oh, that one? He goes, yeah, that one. Do you think they're digging like they did last week on Elm Street when they hit the gas pipe and blew up the house? The week before in town, they'd been digging, hit a gas pipe, gas leaked into a house, fortunately no one was home, blew the house to smithereens, right? So he's in school hearing heavy equipment, and what's spinning in his head? Am I safe? Is the school gonna blow up? Am I gonna be all right? I said, oh, no, that's a bulldozer, they're spreading dirt. He's not having it. We walk out and look at the bulldozer spreading dirt. I go, see, spreading dirt. He's not having it. We stop the guy, very nice guy, and he asks him the question, are you gonna be digging today? No, son, we're not digging, we're just spreading dirt. And that kid just went, oh. You could just watch that burden leave that child. And we talked some, we went back into class, and I assume he had a great day because I didn't hear from him or his teacher for the rest of the day. But it was that type of, you know, that attention, that vigilance, that, am I going to be okay? Overreaction. Behavior. You know, I've been describing a lot these sort of reactive, impulsive, hyperactive kids, like that student I just talked about. Right? They're kind of hypervigilant, well, what's going to happen next? And they're overreacting to normal kind of reminders about tests and stuff like that. And then there are some students who become aggressive and defiant. They've learned that if they push back, that they can begin to control their environment. And they can feel a little better because, yeah, I can control this. No. And I can be no more aggressively if you'd like me to, but no. And they learn that that's a way that they can begin to control and feel a little safer. And I love these two groups of kids. I really do. I really like working with them. I also like them because it's like they're in the classroom raising their hand saying, hey, over here, I'm having a hard time. They're letting us know. It's no secret. There's a third group. And I also have experience with this group. In my early experience, I didn't even realize it. When I was first licensed as a psychologist, I'm working in a school system, K-12, small system outside of Boston. And my office is in the high school. And they start early, and this is a long time ago before they rotated blocks and all that other kind of stuff. And this, I was in the guidance office where my office was and met this young girl, junior. And she and I started talking. And you know, sometimes you meet people and you can just talk to each other. It just flows, right? You're just talking. She and I were that way. So we're talking, and she comes back, and she's coming back 3-4 days a week. And frankly, a lot of days I'm saying, oh, I hope she's there. She's, you know, it's enjoyable. And she was an average kid, average student, C plus averages, you know. And she was a little late for her first period class a lot of the time because she liked to talk, I like to talk. And I checked with her teacher and she said, oh no, she's a good kid. If there's a problem, we'll work it out. And so we did that for 2 years. Never thought a thing about it. 12 years after she graduates, I get a letter. And I'm a little embarrassed, but I have to tell you, she was so far off my radar, it took me 10 minutes to remember who she was. Who is this kid? Who is this? Oh, I know. Oh, was that school? You know, I was kind of working my way down. And then it was like, oh, her? And the letter said to me, thank you so much for being there for me in high school. My dad was regularly physically abusing me at home. School was my safe place. You were my transition in. My words more than her words. But she was thanking me for that. You know, she was engaged in some 12-step program to help her kind of deal with what had happened to her. And she was doing pretty well with it. And nobody had a clue. This was a regular kid in a regular high school. And she was dealing with some pretty horrific stuff at home. So this middle group, they're here. Don't expect everyone to be raising their hand saying, hey, look at me, I got a problem. Relationships. And you know, going back to safety, sense of safety, and going back further to the impact of the environment and context, one of the key ways to help kids feel safe is relationship. Right? How many of us have heard that one of the key resiliency factors for any child is a close, trusting relationship with an adult, parent or otherwise? Absolutely. Relationship, and yet one of the impacts of traumatic experience can be on relationships. Think about what we've talked about. Language. Think about someone who can't tell a joke. What is a joke? It's a very sophisticated cause-effect chronology that's got a little twist in it. Right? You ever talk to someone, they want to tell you a joke and they tell you the punchline and they go, oh, forget I said that. And then they start telling you the joke again. And we're all very polite and we go, oh, that was cute, that was nice. But we're really saying, can you get on with it? I know where we're going. Right? Think about someone whose moods shift rapidly and unpredictably, extraordinarily labile behavior. You say, geez, I'm not in the mood today, please don't. No, no, really. And they're like pushing and hitting and, you know, please. Who wants to be that kid's friend? Who wants to be the friend of the student whose language really can't carry off a joke, can't really do, it's hard. And how do they relate to adults? Particularly if, take the case of that girl that I worked with in high school, I was so surprised when I started thinking and reflecting on why she chose me. Because here I am, I'm a male, but back then I was really young. I was like 24 or 5, right? I didn't live in town. So the accidental run-in in the supermarket wasn't going to happen if she was with Dad. And we could talk. We enjoyed each other. And so what you have is a student who, by bent of their experience, interacts, behaves, thinks, learns differently. And so what we have in schools, and not to any fault of the school, and not because schools aren't caring places who really like kids and want to work with them, but because we don't understand where this is coming from. That a student who's hypervigilant is a kid who just doesn't pay attention. You know, unless you're going to pay attention, you know, what do you want me to do? A student who, that girl I described, under the radar. I need to protect myself. If I just keep it down low, no one's going to know. A kid who's trying to exert control by being aggressive and defiant. Just a bad kid. And difficulties in trusting. You know, I wanted to help. I said, come on in during lunch. After you have your lunch, come on down for 20 minutes. We'll redo the test. I don't know why they didn't come. And the student might be thinking, me alone in a room with you? Really? That's not happening. Right? It's not about me. It's about the experience they bring into it. And these misunderstandings then often lead to disconnection of the child from the environment, from the school. We now have lost that school context that could be so useful to this child. How do we connect that child? And what happens is you see kids, motivation goes away, they continue to engage in behavior that furthers that distance, they become truant, they drop out, they get involved in criminal justice. I think you all probably understand what that path looks like.